in this in this forum. But it's a pleasure to be talking to you. My background, it's sort of, I don't know if everyone's had a chance to read that short bio that we put out, but it started off in the world of trade. I grew up on a cane farm. My dad was a cane farmer, and when I finished school, I got a trade, because that was the thing that cane farmers' sons did. They got a trade so they could always fall back on the farm. But with the sugar industry not being as reliable as it was in the early days, then you know, that trade then provided some sort of opportunity or security to fall back on. And in the industry that I was in, the trade only went for 4 years. So after we finished our trade at the mill, we were put off, and our job was then to go out into the big bad world and find our way. And because of my interest in the engineering sides, I decided to go to university and study mechanical engineering as the next phase, and from there, so that was a few more years, and then travels took me to a place called Mount Gambier. I don't know if many people have been there, but they call it the Blue Lake. It's down in South Australia, and it's just a little town, maybe of about 7,000 or 8,000 people. And I worked as a maintenance engineer in the craft factory, cheese and spread, and where they make Parmesan cheese. And while I was down there, my journey took me to explore some options for some physical pain that I was experienced. So I had a car accident back when I was doing my trade, and I broke my pelvis. And back in those days, there was no rehabilitation that was offered. So once I was out of hospital, then it was just up to me, and just being young and just doing what you do, you develop compensations, as I realized later on. So my journeys were in search of some sort of pain relief for chronic back and shoulder pain. And I was fortunate enough to meet a alternative health practitioner in the town that I was in. And just from some simple treatments, I was already starting to notice some improvement in my physical pain. And I'd been to physios and chiros for a few years before that. So I was quite intrigued. And that was back in the mid 80s, when, you know, massage was, you know, really not a mainstream modality. It was one of those things that, you know, you mentioned someone that you were doing a massage and they thought it was something that happened in a parlor. So there was limited trainings and schools available, but when I did leave Mount Gambier, I found a training school in Brisbane. I think it was the Australian Institute of Applied Sciences, and my journey began from there. I'd also studied strength and conditioning while I was still in Mount Gambier, and I did get a job as a strength and conditioning coach with the YMCA in Mount Gambier. When I came back to Townsville, I worked at Gold's Gym for a few years, and I got to manage the YMCA at Rasmussen for a few years. It's now the PCYC. And in that time, I was doing my own work at home, doing remedial and sports massage. I was fortunate enough to get in with some of the sporting clubs. I did a stint with the Cowboys for a few years at the beginning when they first started. Also trained with some of the sporting teams, the Brothers Hockey Club, strength and conditioning coach, and did some massage work for the junior barras. And then work just began to increase, and from there on in, it's just evolved into a journey of study and learning and passion from there. And here I am now talking to Taryn.
You know, what people who have been to Sam's place of practice is that outside of your line of sight is his wall full of certificates, and you know, he's not lying when he said, you know, the studying has never ever stopped. The interesting and curious thing is, Sam, is, you know, often when we meet naturopaths, you know, they really, you've kind of done a bit of study in every area and using both hemispheres of your brain, which I find really intriguing. And it means that when you're working with you, you have this really well-rounded approach and insight into your mode of delivery. And what I feel as certainly having, you know, utilized your services is that from that place, you are really able to adapt your skills so that that person that client or that customer, patient really feels seen and heard, and you can really get that information across to them in a way that's going to be easily absorbed. And I see that as one of your strengths. So I'm suddenly thinking, oh, that was a bit long. That wasn't even a question in the end. But I sort of see that as really one of your unique strengths. So how has your study in the past really impacted on your delivery of services now?
Yeah, Taryn, that's a good observation because, you know, from those early beginnings in engineering, that's a left brain world. So that's all about, linear, logical, mathematical components to use. So there's a large left brain component in that, and you know, it's a big turnaround to what I'm doing at the moment. It's nearly a big 180-degree turn into the field of perhaps intuition, even though, you know, a lot of people have said that they see me as intuitive. I don't see myself as intuitive, but there's certain things that come through that can maybe give me that impression from time to time. But yeah, that side of that's that right side. And there's still always the discussions that go on between the left and the right, and no one's just solely one hemisphere. So, you know, that's the beautiful thing about the brain, is that you are able to switch backwards and forwards from your hemispheres and to be able to get the most out of that that amazing system.
So you touched there on intuition, and I guess the topic for tonight is biohacking. And so we'll definitely go down the intuition side. Perhaps for people who are sitting here present tonight, you might give a little bit of insight into what biohacking might mean to them.
Yeah, biohacking, Taryn, is a term that if you did get on the website and type it in, there's a lot of people using that term, and basically it's a way of finding alternatives to overcome a situation. So there's a lot of learnings that people are coming across. For example, water may be one, and EMF frequencies may be another, and people are always trying to work out ways on how to overcome that. And they're always asking the question, so, you know, how do I choose the right water filter, and what sort of water am I looking for? And, you know, how do I avoid these frequencies? And, you know, there's ways around everything. So basically a biohack is a way around a situation, because the environmental factors do cause some stress for some people. They're concerned about certain aspects in our environment, and if you can offer them a biohack, it just allows them to relax and have better peace of mind.
So in terms of biohacking, and you have brought up water there, and we did link that up to intention. It first cab off the rank in terms of not being able to afford the best water out there during times of stress. What's your option for dealing with that?
That's a good question. The water issue is so important to every aspect of our physical body, and the expenses that people are doing now to buy water filters can be quite extraordinary. So, you know, there's some people that can afford the most amazing systems out there. But look, your simplest biohack with water, if you can't afford a system, is to tape some words to it. I don't know if many people have been exposed to a guy called Amaro Masoto. He had the books, The Hidden Messages in Water, and he did a couple of series of books where he did some studies on water, and he took this water and he projected certain thoughts or prayers into the water, and then he'd freeze the water, and then he would then cut off slithers of this water and look at under a microscope, and there was patterns that he noticed from different thoughts that emitted into the water. Are you familiar with that work?
I love his work, and I love seeing, I think there's a short video clip where they actually show you the formation of those frozen droplets before your eyes.
That's the amazing thing. So
fascinating.
So really the best biohack for water is, if you've seen some of those photos, they take some water from some of the big cities around the world and they take a photo of it, and then they show the crystalline structure, and then they get people to pray over that water, and the crystalline structure changes. So, you know, all you need to do is to take words like gratitude and I've just had a visitor.
Is it a real visitor?
It's my wife. She's obviously
There must be an issue.
There's an issue. There must be some sort of comment. So I'll just
No.
Okay. I'll just keep going here, and then I'll read this piece of paper. Can you give me a glass of water? Come back
Yeah.
here? So yeah, with this crystalline, all you have to do is tape the words gratitude and love to your water, and it will change the molecular structure of that water so that no matter what that water is, if it's coming out of the tap, if it's got fluoride, if it's got chlorine in it, it can create a more congruent frequency and vibration through the body.
Okay, so I'll let you read that little piece of paper from Kerry, because it will be well-meaning and well-intentioned and looking after both you and I.
Yes, thank you. I'm just having a little chuckle at that. So where was it up to, Taryn?
So we're just talking about intention and changing the frequency of water. So if you can't afford a good filter, you still have that power to change the water that you're putting into your body through prayer and thought and vibration. Exactly.
That's the cheapest way. Look, the next best way is what I found is there's a water filter called Vital water, VITEL, and it's all it is magnesium or prill beads, and by putting those prill beads into the water, it can be shown to take out chlorine and fluoride and pesticides and chemicals. And you know, a couple of those bags I think is don't quote me, maybe $70 or $80, and that's a lifetime. You never have to change them again. So you know, just putting some prill beads like that into some water can also change the chemistry of the water. So you don't have to go into expensive water filtration systems, but there are a couple of biohacks when it does come to the water. They're simple ones. Just change the frequency of your water.
Now, the other thing that we had a conversation about the other day, I follow the medical medium, and I have his book about celery juice, and you really gave me a really good reminder to restart that, because during times of stress, our stomach acids are affected. Can you please share with the audience what we were discussing then, because it was really, really fascinating.
Yeah, okay, so that comes down to the stress. So I think stress was one of the original the topics in the biohack that you had brought up, and it's relevant times with the coronavirus. Some of the most common emails and SMSs I'm getting is, you know, how do I strengthen my immune system, and thank you, and how do I relax myself? People are getting anxiety. People are getting inability to sleep. There's a whole heap of stresses that are set up from that. So, and the stomach is part of the parasympathetic nervous system. So, you know, your parasympathetic nervous system is your rest and digest system. And, you know, when it's compromised, the two systems, your sympathetic is your flight or fright, and both systems are not able to operate at the same time. So if you get chased by a tiger, what happens is that your sympathetic nervous system activates and adrenaline's passed out to the body, and all the blood is shunted to the extremities so that you can run, and blood is diminished in the digestive tract. So all your digestive organs are shut down, because in time of a threat like that, the survival is number one. So, you know, digesting food is the second priority to getting eaten. So during that stressful period, the digestive system shuts down. Now in our society, because of, you know, constant stresses and family stresses and work stresses and financial stresses and children stresses, and even environmental stresses. There's a lot of environmental stresses that are going on. Our sympathetic nervous system tends to be more dominant than it should be. And in those periods, our parasympathetic nervous system takes a beating, and the stomach is, you know, one of the first lines of our defense. Our stomach is a sodium organ, and it should have a pH of between 1 and 3, which means that if you were to eat a metal bolt, at that pH, you would probably dissolve that metal bolt. And that's our first defense system against, viruses and parasites and bacteria that are coming in through the food chain and in through our mouth. So when that parasympathetic nervous system is compromised, the stomach acids are the first medium to be compromised, and then the foods you eat after that don't get broken down properly, so they'll ferment in the digestive system in the stomach. They'll ferment, and a lot of those gases will come up and they'll cause reflux. One of the medical ways of dealing with reflux is through protein pump inhibitors, such as Parad and Nexium, and in the short term they can reduce the severity of the reflux, but in the long term, we need to have our stomach functioning as well as it can. And the medical medium has recognized the impact that the stomach has on the rest of the body, and celery juice is an excellent food choice because it's very, very high in sodium. So when you take celery juice, it regenerates the stomach, and in that period of time, the pepsin and the hydrochloric acid, are able to come back. But at the same time, you'd still need to address those stress factors. They're so important to be able to address those stress factors, and that's probably another topic tonight that we can also go into.
There's lots of stress factors for each individual person out there, which when you just celery juice was based on the unique salts that are found in celery, which kind of gets my mind going back to a conversation that we had that I found really useful when we were talking about the coronavirus and how to best protect our lungs. And I use one of those Carom salt inhalers. And can you just run people through what the benefit or the use of using salt like that?
That's another excellent biohack, Taryn, those salt inhalers. And Karen's got the salt rooms in Townsville, and that's another excellent opportunity we have in this small town to experience the benefits of salt. But basically, salt is a natural form of antibiotic. It's one of the things that they've used for centuries to preserve foods and kill bacteria. And so the same thing happens in our lungs. And I think it came about, one of the big discoveries was back in the Russian salt mines when they were sending their criminals to the salt mines to be punished. And they found a lot of them recovered from some chronic health conditions. And, it can be traced back to the benefits of salt and how salt was able to be used to clear out some nasty infections and issues to do with the lungs. So yeah, that salt inhaler that you're talking about is an excellent biohack. And, the immune system gets a lot of information from our breathing cycle. Our breathing cycle, one of its main job is to regulate the pH or the acid and alkaline environment within the body. And, when we become too acidic from stress, that's an excellent environment to allow, bacteria and funguses and molds to thrive in. So once we maintain a more consistent pH level, then that environment for those pathogens is greatly diminished.
You started, my mind, whenever you speak, my mind just goes off at a tangent because you start opening up these, oh my goodness, I want to learn more about this or learn more about that. But what it did trigger for me, what's been coming up, I have a little machine and I make colloidal silver. Is colloidal silver biohack?
Colloidal silver, that's one of the topics I...
Or is that an odd one?
No. That was one was my original biohacks in the days when I first started. I had a colloidal silver generator as well, and I was making my own colloidal silver. But as the years have gone on, it's sort of fallen off. It's fallen off the priority. Not because I don't necessarily agree with it anymore. It's just one of those things that's fallen off the passion list. But there was a lot of research back in the day with colloidal silver, and it has been used as a natural antibiotic for a long period of time. and some people swear by the benefits of it. You know, I think, you know, the information that most people read is based on the royal family who they classify as blue bloods, and that's one of the things that silver does. It can create a blue tinge within the circuitry system, and so you know, they couple the longevity of the royals to some of the silver that they were getting exposed to. So yeah, I do like colloidal silver as a biohack, although I haven't used it for a while.
Now I've got a little bit of a history lesson why about the silver. So they would be eating off silver, and
Yes.
they would be getting it into their system.
Yes, and they were trying to work
inadvertently.
Very good health line in the royal family. So they're saying, oh, what are they doing that's so beneficial? And so, you know, when they started to research the silver aspect and, you know, how it worked as an antibiotic, it you know, they put two and two together.
I know we're probably going a little bit off topic, or probably not according to the list that you and I might have discussed, but that's probably, you know, normal for us. But what about, you know, the benefits about eating food that's grown locally, or eating like raw honey that's been collected in your area, in terms of stimulating immune system or supporting immune system for times like this when we're trying to protect ourselves?
Aaron, that is another excellent line. I just love your questions. You know, they're coming out.
Randomly.
No,
I know we didn't discuss half of this. I'm like, oh, I wanted to know about this.
Yeah, no, with you it's not random. There's definitely some methodology in your questions. Look, that brings me to a really interesting man that I came across a couple of years ago, and this might be one of the posts I can put up for members in my group to research later on. But his name's Dr. Jack Cruz. He's a neurosurgeon, and he works in New Orleans in America, and his journey is very interesting. And he's a biohacker that I have learnt a lot of information from. And in terms of foods, he's the one who was being able to explain it the best in terms of you need to eat foods that are grown in the latitude of your environment. So, you know, he's been able to prove from the effects of the sun how the food chain that we eat needs to be grown locally. So if we're starting to eat foods out of season, that creates a disruption within our electron chain and ultimately our immune system and our hormones and our neurotransmitters. So it's really important to utilize the nature's aspect of the foods that can grow in your environment. So, you know, there's certain foods at certain times of the year that can't grow in this latitude that we're in, and we shouldn't be eating them. So we export a lot of our food from overseas, and we're eating some fruits and vegetables up here that, you know, are not in season. So it's a very important one. So those aspects that you talked about with honey that's grown locally and vegetables that are grown locally, they're just so important to the overall electron chain within the body. And he's very big on thermodynamics within the body. In fact, Jack Cruz puts nutrition way down the chain in terms of biohacking. I know that's going to surprise a lot of people, but he feels that the sun is your most important factor when it comes to biohacking. That's where the secret is. And, you know, through our conditioning and through the information we get, most people are scared of the sun, and it's creating a lot of the health challenges that are becoming evident in society now.
You've got a biohack that includes the sun. Do you want to share that?
Just bring me up.
Oh, this is the one at the beginning of the day to reset your biorhythms, to watch it rising, and also going out and closing your eyes and staring at the sun.
Yes. So one of the biohacks is he feels that if you can get as much morning sun as possible, with as little amount of clothes on as possible, he said 70% of all the diseases and conditions in our world would be taken care of. Now, that's a pretty big claim. But when he goes into the science of it, it just makes so much sense. So, you know, that early morning sun, as soon as it cracks the dawn, has got the minimum amount of UV rays. So you can take as much of that as you want. And that morning sun is what sets up your melatonin, your dopamine. It also sets up your ability to resist any damaging rays of the sun later on in the day. So really, there's no point if you don't get the morning sun and you try and get your sun at lunchtime in the afternoon, it's not going to be the same. So getting that morning sun is actually what sets you up for the benefits of the sun later on in the day. So, he really feels that you need to get as much morning sun as possible. There's no limit to that. Once the sun gets to about 50 degrees of morning and 50 degrees of afternoon, that's when we get most of the UVA and the UVB rays. And now they're the ones that start the synthesis of the vitamin D on the skin. And after the afternoon sets under that 50-degree angle, then you can go out and get as much sun as you can. So when I was reading his blog, he was a neurosurgeon, so he used to spend 7 to 8 hours in the operating theatre under fluorescent lights, and he became obese. And his turning point was he was doing a lecture, and he hopped out of the chair and he ruptured his cruciate ligament in his knee. That's how overweight he was. So he sat down and he decided that he had to find another way, and he went through and explored every single diet known to man. He knew he had to lose weight, and the more he dieted and the more he experimented with all these different types of eating patterns, the more weight he put on. And it's a story that is very common for a lot of people. And so he went back to his textbooks, and he discovered a guy called Dr. Robert Beck, who's the father of electromagnetic medicine. And he studied his works, and he studied everything he could about electromagnetism. And he then went to the textbooks, and he's probably the most versed person in biochemistry and thermodynamics that I've ever come across. So some of his videos and his blogs are very, very technical. There'll be some that I'll see if I can find that are more pointed towards the layperson, but the information in there is really good. And each time you listen to it, you just get more and more information about these biohacks that he talks about. How to biohack your environment with water, with DHA from fish, all those elements that he's really passionate about. So that's where he feels that's where he feels food is down the chain, because the mitochondria, the powerhouse within your cell, gets 70% of the electron transport chain from the sun and from the earth, and 30% from your food. So people who are indoors all day long, they better be eating properly, because they're only getting 30% of their mitochondrial function from their food. So, it's very, very hard these days to eat properly. People are not eating as well as they can. They're not eating environments as well as they can. And that creates a lot of dysfunction with the mitochondria. And when the mitochondria becomes dysfunctional, that has the whole chain, hormones, neurotransmitters, it affects people's lives, and their energy levels suffer, their sleep cycles out, the circadian rhythm, they're not sleeping, they're not healing, and the cycle is continuous. So that's another form of stress that people are exposed to, letting alone their subconscious patterns that are going on.
So we sort of covered water, we've covered air and getting, salt into the lungs as well. And then we've covered, sunlight. Any more biohacks that are free, or cheap like that?
Look, the biggest information that has come up time and time again with clients, and this goes back to the left brain, right brain thing, is that, the more I do this work, the more I realize that the people's minds are responsible for everything that happens in their life. And so, the best thing that people can do as the biohack for everything is to become conscious. Now, everyone's probably heard that a million times. They've heard Eckhart Tolle, they've heard Thich Nhat Hanh, they've heard all these new age gurus and self-help teachers talk about being present, but it's not as easy as it sounds. So, when people read and hear about being present, they think, wow, that's really simple. I'll just go and become mindful. And my experience was that personally, that's not as easy as it sounds. And, my clients are telling me the same thing. And I don't know if it's something that you talk about in any of your seminars. Taryn, is it something that you go into in your women?
Particularly this year with the 2 energy in there. you know, that external twos, and I talk about it at each opportunity. You know, the external twos for this year is, you know, the external chaos that's going on around us, and how crucially important it is for the internal twos for us to be held fully accountable and fully responsible for where our thoughts are going. And, you know, are they going towards the things that we don't want, or are they going towards the things that we do want? So that's where, you know, the meditation comes in, and the mindfulness, and being able to, you know, I guess, put our thoughts on a leash and decide where we're going to take them.
Yeah, that's amazing, because that's the critical part. People don't realize that everything that's happening in their life is being manifested by their own thoughts. It's a hard concept to get your head around. So, you know, it really is so important to become conscious. You know, we're only conscious 5% of the day. We're subconscious 95% of the day. And that subconscious mind is where all our habits are. That's a habit mind. So, you know, basically that's just like a hard recorder. It's a hard drive. It's got all your programs on there that are based on the first 7 years of life. So, you know, that's why it's so hard for people to change the way they think. It's so hard for people to, you know, get out of the ruts and the programs and the sabotage that they keep going through day after day, is because they're living most of their day in the subconscious mind. And, you know, while they're in the subconscious mind, they're going to keep bringing up all the programs that they're trying to avoid. And it's not as easy as it sounds to stay present. So it takes a lot of effort to stay present. But there are some biohacks, and one of the guys that I'll also put a connection or a link to is a guy called Frank Kinslow. And he's written a lot of books on quantum entrainment. And the book that I have here that I'll post later on, it's called the... Is that coming up backwards? Is those words coming up back to front?
No, it's coming up perfectly. The Kinslow system. Yeah,
the Kinslow system. So that book there is I would say all the information you need to biohack your whole life. So I'll put that up there. But basically, there's information in there how to simply become present, how to stop your thoughts, how to create you feeling, which is euphoric feeling, and how to live in the heart, the feel of the heart. Another guy I was lucky enough to see was a guy called Richard Bartlett, and he's the originator of the matrix energetics, and he talks about the feel of the heart. The feel of the heart is like a torus or a toroidal feel. It looks like a donut. I don't know. Have you seen pictures of the feel of the heart?
Oh, it's phenomenal.
Yeah. So that feel of the heart, electromagnetically, is 60 times greater amplitude than the feel of the brain, and 5,000 times more magnetically powerful than the feel of the brain. So the electrical field, you know, can resonate and communicate with every cell in the body, and the magnetic field can actually be measured several feet or meters away from the body. So, you know, the power of the heart is where the manifestations come from.
You know what I'm thinking, Sam, that this kind of conversation needs to be happening more regularly, and you'll have to do some Facebook Lives in your group where you can touch on some of these things a little bit more and expand upon them more, because, you know, I'm sure that more than just a few of us here are keen to know at a greater depth what you've been talking about. I'm going to put my glasses on because I can see some things coming through. And if I go back a bit, I can see that Alana, that sounds okay, that's Kerry just talking. Taryn, ask Sam about the many benefits of magnesium and how easy it is to take it, or I could also add in. So, chatting about magnesium, Sam?
Magnesium, very important mineral for the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system, more specifically the parasympathetic. So it's not an easy mineral to absorb. That's where all the problem comes in. So there's different types of magnesiums. magnesium citrates and chlorides and sulfates, phosphates. So it's one of the minerals that a lot of people will say when they start taking magnesium, they get diarrhea, and it's because they're just not absorbing it. And some people don't tolerate any form of magnesium. So that's one of the things. As soon as people start taking magnesium, they get crook and they get diarrhea. And one of the reasons I've learned from that is one of the biohacks from Dr. Jack Kruse. He's not a big fan of supplementation. Actually, he feels that you can get all your nutrients from the sun. And one of the biohacks with magnesium comes back to that. What's happening in the stomach. What's happening with the methylation cycle. What's happening with your ability to absorb and utilize the nutrients from your food. Now, from that stomach thing we talked about before, there's big issues with leaky gut. The nutrients that we're getting from our food chain just are not getting absorbed. So, our cells are starving, and that results in a weight gain. I know it sounds probably counterintuitive, but obesity is another form of starvation. So when you're starving, your body's starving of nutrients. The body is very, very clever. So what it does, it wants to store as much available fat as it needs to because it thinks it's going to a famine. So once you improve the electron chain, and this is the thing that Dr. Jack Kruse gets into with a lot of his nutrition gurus, is he asks them a question and he asks them to describe the electron chain. And a lot of them see foods as carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. But they're not where the magic happens. The magic happens in the electrons, the protons, and the neutrons that are happening through this chain. So it's very, very important to get your mitochondria right. So, he classifies himself as a mitochondriac because that's the key. And if you remember before, 70% of your mitochondria is from sunlight through the eyes. And I don't know if I mentioned before that sunglasses are probably one of our biggest health concerns. So when people wear sunglasses, they're actually stopping where the light needs to come in. The light needs to come in through the eyes, through the skin, and especially on the belly. And that belly part is where the mitochondria gets its kick in from. I'm not sure the mitochondria, the microbiome. So everyone's talking about this microbiome within the gut, and not many people realizing it's a light-mediated colony that thrives on sunlight. So a lot of people are looking at the microbiome in terms of different types of prebiotics and different types of probiotics, but if they're not getting that light exposure, then it makes it very, very hard for the body to work efficiently.
What about going back when we're talking about sunglasses, wearing our blue light filter glasses or changing the color of our light bulbs and reducing the blue light, because that's affecting our mitochondria? Big
biohack. So, fluorescent lights, LED lights, computer screens, mobile phones, that's predominantly blue light coming through there. And that blue light is not what our mitochondria and our circadian rhythm want. So as soon as our eyes see blue light at nighttime, it thinks it's daytime. So what it does, it keeps us awake. So then our sleep cycle is not efficient. We don't get the proper sleep, the recovery sleep. We don't go into dream sleep. So we'll wake up in the morning tired, and then our day continues. And, we've got this technology exposed to us now, particularly with the coronavirus. Everyone's on technology 24 hours a day, computer screens, mobile phones. And not a lot of people are realizing that they've got these devices only a few inches away from their thyroid. And so that causes the other issue with the affecting the thyroid gland and the implications of the hormonal chain through that. So, trying to keep your devices on blue light filters, trying to keep your devices away from your body. One of the best biohacks for that is if you do talk on the mobile phone, use a set of air tube headphones. A lot of people just use...
what that looks like. That's what an air tube looks like.
Yeah, air tube. So what happens is that the wired headphones take the signal like an antenna straight into the head. So your head actually turns into an antenna. So with the air tube headphones, there's a tube of air. So the conductivity doesn't go up into the head. So you can put your device several feet away from where your body is, and you can talk on the phone and minimize the effect of the blue light and also any EMFs that are coming from your phone. All computer screens these days should have blue light filters on there. And at nighttime, make sure your fluoros are off, make sure your LEDs are off. Incandescent lights are really, really effective. That's a good biohack. I know the environmentalists are trying to say, let's go away from incandescent lights, but in terms of health, the incandescent lights are far more healthier than the fluoros and the LED lights. So, you know, once we start getting exposed to lights at nighttime, our body clock tends to go into wake-up mode. And a lot of people may relate to the fact that when they sleep, a lot of people think they're getting good sleep, but they may not be remembering their dreams, or they might be getting really weird dreams. And there are a couple of signs that they're not going into their proper brainwave patterns at nighttime in healing. So, you know, the theta healing is very important as we sleep. We need to go into that theta brainwave pattern at nighttime, and it helps us to go into the deepest recovery.
Sam, is there much truth there behind that the hours of sleep before midnight are far more therapeutic than the hours of sleep after midnight? Is there any truth in that?
Yes, the Chinese say that the period of time between 11 p.m. and 1 a.m., which is the gallbladder time, if you can be asleep between those 2 hours, it's equivalent to 4 hours of sleep. So that's the most important time to be asleep, you know, between your gallbladder and your liver. And that's why a lot of people wake up anywhere between, you know, 1 o'clock and 3 o'clock in the morning. That's classically a sign that there's some energy disruption in their liver. There's something going on in that pattern, and a lot of it will be, you know, probably that emotional component that I find a lot in liver, a lot of SOL, we call it, the shit on the liver, you know, stored anger and resentment. And there's a lot of stuff now. Science is starting to back up those periods of sleep as well.
What about, you see, I know you're trapped and you're being very polite while we're here, and I keep looking at the time thinking, oh, another question. While you're here, what about, is it using infrared light on our bodies for the mitochondria? Is it infrared?
Infrared. Now, this is a topic I can't talk from personal experience about. This is one area that I am doing some research. Dr. Jack Cruz does put on a lot of information on infrared devices on his sites, on his blogs. He talks about a lot on his videos, and there's some devices that are more inferior to others. So I wouldn't like to talk about exactly which one to use, but he's very, very big in infrared. So, and infrared, when you see him on his video chats, his whole room is just red. He's got red lights. Everything is red. And, you know, he uses that as a biohack because of the fact that he has to operate for so many hours a day. His other biohack is to spend all his waking time in the sun. So, you know, he spends 6 to 8 hours a day in the sun with no shirt on. So when you see his Facebook or you see his webs, he's never got a shirt on, and he's hardly ever sunburned. That's one of the things that, you know, is a big thing for people to get their head around, because they've been given so much information on maybe the detrimental side of the sun and how it's been blamed for skin cancers and melanomas. It's one of the things that people don't quite understand on how to be able to get the sun and develop a callus to it. So a callus is basically the ability to go out in the sun for long periods of time and not even get red. And, you know, if people can develop a sun callus, very similar to how they get a callus on their hands when they're out in the garden, you know, you can go out for hours and not even get red. And, you know, it's about doing it sensibly, and depends on your skin type. So, you know, just a word of warning here, you know, I'm not expecting everyone to be running out tomorrow and getting 8 hours of sun and getting 3rd-degree burns. It's more about doing this sensibly and, you know, understanding how to get exposure to the sun in small dosages so that your body can tolerate it. And just to give you an example, when your skin starts to go red, a little bit pinkish red, when you've been out in the sun, that's equivalent to about 5,000 IU of vitamin D. So, you know, straight away, you've just got 5,000 IU of vitamin D from that little episode in the sun where your skin went a little bit pink.
Can we just get a little bit specific? Because I read somewhere about the, you know, getting the sun onto your belly but it had to do with the angle of the sun. So that was really about timing of the day.
Yeah.
So is that, what is that for us in Townsville?
That's your 50-degree angle I was talking about. So
is that from?
So that's roughly anywhere between, say, 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock.
Okay.
And it depends on the time of the year. So, you know, if you look at that angle, you know, that 45 to 50-degree angle where the sun is on from the horizon, that gives you a pretty good indication of where your best sun is.
Okay. So just until it turns pink.
No, well, that's probably pushing it too far originally. What you want to do is you just want to know what your tolerance is. Just know, you know, most people already know how long they can go out in the sun before they start to burn. What you want to do is you want to go through and make sure you don't get to that stage. And then as the days progress, you just push that period of time just a little bit more and keep monitoring your skin and make sure it doesn't go pink until, you know, eventually you can spend longer and longer periods out in the sun without getting burnt.
I know that when I did my cosmetic chemistry course, and they were talking about, you know, skin cancers and things like that, and they related it back to rather building skin immunity. And one of the little hacks that, very simple and very cheap one that we used was actually brewing white tea, which is the little fine white hairs before it's green tea. It's got the highest amount of antioxidants, and just keeping that in a spray bottle inside the fridge, and just every time you went past the fridge, just spraying it on your skin to build immunity. So that was one of their cheap hacks. I'm not sure if that's relevant, but I am the queen of trivia, so I thought we couldn't go past without that, talk about that. So I'm just going to have a quick look at the questions. Alana wants to know, do you agree with the fermented vegetables to improve gut health and therefore the immune system?
Yeah, the fermented foods, they have a lot of benefits. The prebiotics that come from fermented foods, cultures have been using them for thousands of years. So, you know, when you look at your cultures, the Aboriginals and the Ayurvedics and South American tribes, their foods were fermented. And even going back to the Chinese and the Japanese, they ferment their soy products because, you know, soy was one of the foods that caused Hashimoto's or destruction of the thyroid tissue. So by fermenting those foods, it took away any of the lectins and neurotoxins that were available in that food, and also made it into a type of a food that helps the microbiome within the digestive system.
Charmaine saying we get from Nexus Mag our air tube earphones. Oh, that's Charmaine was just telling everyone where to get the air tube headphones from.
Even check eBay. If you go to eBay and you put in air tube headphones, you'll come across quite a few there as well.
And it's really surprising because we're so ingrained in thinking that headphones look a certain way. I'm always constantly surprised when it's just literally an empty tube.
Yep.
And I can still, you know, have fairly good sound quality. In fact, so much so that my children still steal these ones. So I thought they wouldn't be as appealing. And I think Kerry's having a little bit of a dig about Jack Cruz not having any children or family if he gets to spend that much time out in the sun. And I agree, it was probably the same comment I had about Dave Asprey, who also does a bit of biohacking, that in order to really pursue all those things in such a way, he can't possibly be doing anything else with his life. Eek blisters, sunscreen has bad ingredients, and Dave Asprey has a patient wife. Yes, I agree, Kerry. Kerry's a patient wife too. We might just add that in, Sam.
Yes, she is very patient, Taryn, very patient.
So, look, Sam, I might just open up the floor to anybody who wants to ask. And is that okay if it's a Q&A session for you? Okay, so if anybody wants to ask any questions, please pop them in the box. And I think that we'll sort of see what happens if anyone wants to come. Else, I can unmute you all. Sometimes it's just a bit noisy in the background you know, if there's things going on in the background. So the good thing is usually when there's no questions, it means that you have covered everything and in enough depth that people are still just digesting what they've just heard. So at the moment, nothing's coming through.
Or Taryn, that could be saying, what the hell just bloody happened there?
No. Sometimes people are just processing. Penny said, what is the best form of magnesium and which brand would you recommend?
Yeah, okay. So that probably, I didn't answer that question properly before. Look, some of the practitioner-only lines produce like a biglycinated magnesium, which is easier to absorb. But my magnesium of choice, if you're not going to those more expensive brands, is magnesium chloride. Magnesium chloride is attached to a chloride molecule, so it's one of the things that can also help with the acids in your stomach. But it's all about working out what your tolerance is and taking it in that way to see how well you tolerate it, to see, you know, if it draws too much water into the intestines, and then you need to go back again, as you know, to find out how well your parasympathetic nervous system is working. It's all about the gut. So, you know, if the stomach's working well, then, you know, we increase the availability of magnesium. But it's one of the biggest things that, you know, when I look into people's eyes through iridology, it's the organ that shows up first. And in your eye chart, let me see. Can you see that?
Yep.
Okay, so
that's the left one we can see.
Yeah, so around here, around the pupil, that first circle you can see is the stomach. So, you know, we start from, you know, the central nervous system to the stomach to the bowel, and then it goes into the rest of the body here. So what happens is that stomach line, when I see it in the eye, it's generally very, very white or very, very dark, which is a sign of insufficient stomach function or under acid stomach function. And so generally, you know, in naturopathic philosophy, that's where all disease starts, in the stomach. And then it can go way up to the mouth. So, you know, because people aren't chewing their food properly, because people are having issues with teeth, and their parasympathetic nervous system, when it's not activated, don't produce enough saliva. And that's another biohack as well to activate the parasympathetic nervous system, is to fill your mouth with saliva often. So when you fill your mouth with saliva, it activates the vagus nerve. So what the vagus nerve, it's a nerve that goes from the brainstem right down through your chest and into all the organs. And its job is to take signals down to the organs and back from the organs back to the brain. And when we're stressed, that function becomes diminished, and that's part of the parasympathetic nervous system that turns down. So most people will know that, you know, when they're stressed, their mouth dries up. That's the first sign of, you know, sympathetic nervous system dominance. So filling your mouth with saliva is a really good way to start relaxing your parasympathetic nervous system, or activating it and getting it ready to digest food. And so the environment that we also eat in is so important. You know, we're eating in front of the TV, we're reading magazines, we're doing things that are distracting us from the consciousness of eating. You know, Thich Nhat Hanh always talks about mindfully eating, being aware of the food, being aware of the texture, being aware of the taste. So when we do things in that consciousness that we referred to before, it takes us out of our subconscious programs. And those subconscious programs, you know, up until the age of 7, we're basically hypnotized. So all our subconscious programs are loaded in by the time we're 7 years old. And so all the programs we're running it as adults, that's where the referral's coming from. You know, so the only way to change the subconscious mind is three ways. There's 3 ways. The first one is through hypnosis. The second way is through repetition. And the third way is through energy techniques. So people do EFT, people do thought field therapy, they do EMDR, kinesiology, body talk system. You know, there's probably hundreds that I've just left out there. But, you know, if you want to change the patterns in your subconscious mind, you've got to access the theta state. And, you know, people are doing it the hard way. So what they do is they read a self-help book on how to better themselves, how to attract love into their life, how to attract money. But, you know, it's only going to be short-lived because their subconscious mind is active 95% of the time. So they're going straight back into their previous programs again. So you've got to be able to change you've got to be able to change the programs before you can start to attract and manifest things into your life. Actually, another biohack that I forgot to tell people, and I give it to a lot of my clients, is to listen to hypnosis before they go to sleep at night, because that's the time of the day when you can put in your programs to change those subconscious patterns. So there's a lot of different tracks available. Some you can pay for, some you can even try on Spotify. I was looking through Spotify the other day, and there was a myriad of authors that are offering, hypnosis that people can try. So some people have got a Spotify account. Even if you don't have a Spotify account, there's things that you can still listen to on there. They might have an ad or two every now and then, but it's something that they can experiment as they're going to sleep. And they need to do it often. Just once isn't enough. Generally, you need to do a month of reprogramming before you are able to get any benefits from that. But that's an excellent biohack into the subconscious mind is nightly hypnosis.
So we're just going back to the magnesium track. Charmaine's just talking about putting magnesium in the bathtub and soaking it for 20 minutes. Does it, magnesium, the increase in absorption, you need to have your water fairly warm and for a certain amount of time to...
Yes, yeah. If you do the salts, generally people put those magnesium salts into the water. The heat's very important. That heat is critical. I mean, you don't want to burn yourself, but you need to have that water warm enough, and that definitely opens up your pores of your skin.
I know that I order some magnesium chloride from the Dead Sea, and I buy it in big fat buckets. But it's quite expensive, and I mean, it's not expensive compared to when you're buying the little box of magnesium sulfate from the supermarket. You start looking and you're going, well, you're getting better quality. But someone had suggested that, and I started using it, effectively doing it as a foot soak. So with clean feet after the bath and then hot foot soak, because the feet were great at absorbing it as well. Is that a good idea?
Yes, very, very good. That's actually what a lot of the Chinese and the Tibetans use to flush the system and to activate the kidneys. They put their feet in water as hot as they can stand. And some people put green tea in there. Some people put the magnesium salts. But what happens is the end point of the kidney finishes in the feet. So once you work that energy channel, you open up the kidneys and you create a pumping effect. And it's a great way. And that's one thing I didn't mention before as another biohack is grounding. So when you're doing the sun stuff, make sure you've got no shoes on. And the sun is an anode, the earth is a cathode. So we're basically like the battery in the middle. We're getting charged up by the sun. So because most people spend their time indoors, they're just not getting the full potential of nature's charge system.
What do you think of those grounding sheets? So, I had a sheet that I would sit on that I would plug in and earth myself with that, and I also had bed sheets with these silver threads that I'd plug in and earth myself and sleep with like that. What are your thoughts on that? I know we're going off a little bit off track, but I may as well ask.
Look, I've never tried them personally. I've read about them. I just don't know how effective they are. I don't have anyone who maybe besides you who's used them. So, I know there was a book called Earthing. I think they talked about these sheets in there a lot, and other devices. And I think also Jack Cruz talks about a type of earthing system that he uses, but it's different to that. One thing he does say about those earthing sheets, he says, never use them in the daytime. He says, if you're ever going to lie in them, make sure that's always at nighttime, because that can throw out your circadian rhythm as well. So I can't say yes or no on the earthing sheets, Taryn, because I
was using them effectively for, like chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia symptoms where you just cannot get that good quality sleep.
What did you notice?
I can feel like inside my body there's a frequency when I am unwell, and it's got a pulse. And you can't, when you're particularly unwell, I can't fall asleep because that frequency is too revved up. And what it does is it kind of just brings that frequency down a bit so that the body can actually relax enough to fall asleep.
Yes, sounds good.
Okay. So I'm starting to think that I am letting out too much of my weird things. So we might go back to the questions because that's okay. So by doing it through the magnesium, we're bypassing the gut, which is good for people who are sensitive there. Yeah. Paula's saying, thanks, Sam, she's got to go. She's got a business meeting. She said, thank you so much. Charmaine's just saying walking in the grass and the beach with the sand is great for grounding. And Alana said, thank you so much for the reminder. So I think that Emma wanted to know, are your glasses you're wearing blue light blocking ones right now, or are they just your prescription ones?
No. Who asked that? Who's asking that question?
That's Emma.
Yeah, hello, Emma. These are my blue blocking glasses here. So normally I put them over the top. That's them there. But I didn't know whether people could see my eyes, so I haven't worn them. But this is what they look like. They're just they're called Swanics. I got them from Amazon for about $100. And yeah, so they're things that, you know, at night time, if you know, with fluoros and TV, there's things that can help with that biohack of the blue light.
Alana's saying, so sunscreen is better than burns if you have no other choice. For example, long bushwalk, and can you protect your face and allow your arms to absorb the sunlight?
That's a good question, Alana. There are times as workers that are out in the sun all day long, and this, you know, you've got to take up the risks of third-degree burn. So what I'd probably advise people more than sunscreen is to cover up. You know, if they wear a hat and long sleeves, that can minimise some of the burning. But there's just a lot of things in sunscreen that just don't add up. You know, the sunscreen really only stops the UVB rays, which are the really important ones, and they're the ones that make the skin red. They don't stop the ones that create wrinkling of the skin and the aging anyway. And so there's a lot of chemicals in those sunscreens that just are not conducive to what the body wants, I suppose is the easiest way to put that. And the other issue with the skin, in fact, Jet Cruz is adamant in his blogs that the sun actually protects you against skin cancer. He says that's one of the things that actually prevents skin cancer is the sun. So, you know, that's another statement that, you know, is hard to digest because we've been fed so many years that, you know, the sun is a cause of skin cancer. But a lot of the research shows that, you know, people who work outside have got less skin cancers than people that work inside. So Dr. Jet Cruz is adamant that fluorescent lights and LED lights are the cause of skin cancers and not the sun. And there's other proponents that actually feel that a lot of skin cancers are caused from the synthetic clothes that we wear. So, you know, one of the trends out there at the moment is these bike pants that are really forming to the skin. They don't allow the skin to breathe, and they're made from synthetic materials. And a lot of people don't realize that those cottons in those clothes have got formaldehyde and dyes in them, and because they're inferior types of cotton. A lot of them are made in China, and they're dipped in different chemicals to keep the fibers stronger. So when you sweat, those chemicals come out of the material and into your skin. And so there's a catalyst there in the skin for a lot of things to happen. So there's a lot of other things besides the sun that are responsible for skin cancers.
I've just scrolled back and I found a note from Sam just wanting to talk about, you know, thymus thumping, or he calls it thymus tapping for immunity and the benefits of iodine.
Yes, is that Sam Matt? Is that Sammy?
I can unmute him. Do you want to say hi, Sam? You're on.
Hi.
Oh, is that Sam? Sam Gigenti asked that question.
Yeah.
Hi, Sam.
Hello, Sam. Yes, thymus tapping, very, very good for immune system. Activates natural killer cells. So when you tap your thymus, it activates natural killer cells to be released. So one of the most effective things in the immunity of the body is thymus tapping. So it's one of the techniques they use in kinesiology. The trick, obviously, is not to overdo it. You know, some people tap their thymus too hard. Some of the references go back to Tarzan. A lot of people say Tarzan was activating his thymus back in the jungle. But yeah, the thymus tap is a very effective way to activate the immune system. And one of the reasons why the thymus doesn't get the activation it needs is because we don't breathe properly. You know, and another biohack, geez, Taryn, they're all coming out now. Another biohack is actually breathing. People don't know how to breathe. You know, it's one of the things that mind and breath are linked. And the more stressed people become, the more their breath becomes shallow and the more their breath becomes constricted. And so the movement of the rib cage can also stimulate the thymus. So when people's ribs are locked and they're not breathing deeply and they're not breathing as well as they can, then you know, those structures don't get massaged, they don't get milked, the lymphatic system doesn't get operated, the digestive system doesn't get switched on, and we become very acidic. So one of the main jobs of breathing is to alkalize the body. So I'm sure most of your listeners are aware of Wim Hof and his techniques, and you know, they're a lot of the techniques that I advocate as well. Is that Wim Hof technique of breathing is so powerful in terms of you know, relaxing the nervous system, alkalizing the body, and creating you know, the parasympathetic nervous system to become activated again.
I sent my beloved and my two boys down to Wim Hof end of last year.
Did they enjoy it?
You know, Mark actually practices it, and you know, grabs some bags of ice and sticks it in the outdoor bathtub and does the ice bath. But in terms of the breathing, yeah, it's pretty spacey, he reckons.
Oh, it's incredible.
Yeah, pretty powerful. So I'm just going to quickly scroll down, and then we might end up wrapping it up. Any tips to reduce sugar cravings? Is that a lack of chromium?
Sugar craving is adrenaline and cortisol. So what happens is that adrenaline is your quick stress hormone, and cortisol is your chronic stress release. And so what happens is that in those environments, it creates a lot of a need for blood sugars, particularly brain sugars, because of the fact that, you know, if you're craving something, it means that you're not present. And so there's a lot of subconscious patterns and programs, and those cravings tend to satisfy a pleasure and pain center. So, you know, when we're having stressful thoughts or the stressful situations, the subconscious mind will remind us to take something that creates quite a short amount of pleasure. And, you know, sugar can be one of those things that create a pleasurable sensation for a short period of time, but the effects over a long time create an insulin resistance. So it gets to the point where, you know, our system is actually starving and keeps getting the stimulus to look for sugars. So, you know, those cravings will go back to the habits that are happening in the subconscious mind. So once you become present and conscious, it's so easy to change those patterns.
So, Sam, you know, it's also quite a typical response after doing chemotherapy, which obliterates the body's natural homeostasis.
Yeah, you're talking about those cravings that come from that?
Yeah.
Because it's a stress response. Anything that causes stress in the body will create an uptake for some sort of simple sugars. And this is where it comes back to the mitochondria again. So what's happening is because people aren't getting enough sun, they're relying on they need a stimulant to keep them going. And so your four stimulants are sugar, caffeine, alcohol, and tobacco. So what happens is when people have, you know, mitochondria that are deficient, they will need to actually get a boost from some other supply because they're 70% in deficit. So they'll look for something that'll give them a quick hit. People will look for sugar, they'll look for caffeine, they'll look for alcohol, and then you've got your cigarette smokers. And so when I'm looking, you know, in people's eyes, and you can see that that pupil that's the size of a dinner plate, and they're in, you know, sympathetic nervous system dominance, they'll crave all four of those things. And that's, you know, that's the only thing that gets them through. If they didn't take a stimulant, they would not be able to get through the day. They'd crash, they'd be moody, they just wouldn't fire. So, you know, it's about getting your mitochondrial function back in order again.
Charmaine just touched on and chocolate cravings. That was a bit of a giggle. Jackie wants to say, is it the morning sun that builds up your solar callus?
The morning sun is actually prepares you. So what the morning sun does, it produces, it sets up the circadian rhythm for the melatonin. So that morning sun is where you get your melatonin for your night sleep. Melatonin is not produced at nighttime. It's set up in the daytime. So that's where Jack Kruse is not big on taking melatonin at night. We're not supposed to take melatonin at night. It's produced in the morning. So once we get that morning sun, we've got our stimulus for that melatonin production. But what it also does, it sets us up for protection of the sun for the rest of the day. So if you don't get that morning sun, you can go out at lunchtime in the afternoon. You can actually get burnt, and that could damage the skin layers. So that morning sun protects you against any further damage from the skin, and it also is critical for setting up your melatonin, your dopamine, your serotonin.
Charmaine's requesting a quick breathing lesson, please.
Charmaine, you know my favorite breathing technique is called square breathing, and so I don't know whether you've heard of that one, but you know what square breathing does. Square breathing is when you take 4 seconds to breathe in, you hold your breath for 4 seconds, you take 4 seconds to breathe out, then you hold your breath for another 4 seconds. So that breathing cycle, if you continue it, it has a dual effect. What it does, it can calm the sympathetic nervous system when it's stressed, and it can actually activate the parasympathetic nervous system when it's inactive. So in other words, it can help you when you're stressed and calm you down, and when you're flat and you've got no energy, it can pick you up. So that's a cycle that I advise people to do for anywhere between 2 and 5 minutes, just a few times a day. The Wim Hof technique is another one. I don't know whether you've practiced the Wim Hof technique, but that's just, it's nearly like circular breathing. It's a series of breathe-ins as deep as you can do, and then you let go. Not fully, but you breathe in as fully as you can, and you let go. And you do that for a series of maybe 30 breaths until you start to feel a little bit lightheaded or dizzy, and then you keep your breath out for as long as you can. So Wim Hof is very big on his cold therapy, and a lot of times, you know, when people are just starting to get introduced to that cold therapy, he wants them to be able to keep their breath out for at least 3 minutes before they start to get exposed to very cold temperatures. And I've had some of my clients who are keeping their breath out for close to 5 minutes, which I haven't been able to get close to. I think the most I've done is about 3 minutes and 3 minutes and 20. A lot of people will average around about that 2 minute mark. So, you know, it's like a state of bliss when you can keep your breath out for that period of time. It's quite a present and a mindful state. Does it help, Mate?
Yeah, I think that explained. I know that, you know, after doing the Wim Hof weekend, the very third time, third cycle Mark did the breathing, I was timing things. So he was just doing the breath work, and he got up to 3 minutes, 55 seconds, but was totally unaware that he was able to do that. And afterwards I said, oh, look, this is how you got to. Totally blown away. But they get to that really bliss state that they almost pass out, I think. Yeah, and that's with not even having done the practice. So certainly it's a really interesting breathing technique.
I love it.
Yeah. So Sam, I feel like I've tricked you. I said come and speak on my webinar, speak for about 40 minutes, and it's now 8:20. So perhaps I lied. But I've had a load of fun, and I've thoroughly enjoyed having this. I'll just double check. Charmaine's just saying in through the nose and out through the mouth, or do you alternate with nostrils for the breath work?
For the Wim Hof method, he does through the mouth, in through the mouth, out through the mouth. I'd like to do it in through the nose. I like the nose and out through the mouth. I just like to filter that air a little bit more, but he's not too fussy on that. On the technique, whether you do it through your nose or through your mouth.
Super. I'm going to unmute everyone, and we'll just say goodbye. So all the participants should be unmuted. if you want to say, that's all coming through now. If you want to, anyone wanted to just say a final thing, I'm going to stop the recording now, so it's not going to be recording. So thank you to everyone who joined, and the recording's going to stop now.